All right, so we're diving into all this game dev wisdom today.
Yeah.
Hours of videos from these experienced developers, and they're ready to share their secrets with you. You want to know how to become a game developer.
Right.
We've got you covered.
You've given us a really good foundation for this deep dive.
Oh, thanks.
You know, it's so interesting how many aspiring game devs jump in thinking it's all about, like one brilliant idea.
Right.
But these videos are all about, the importance of like everything else.
Yeah, it's like anything creative, right? Like that initial spark is important, but it's the dedication,
Oh, yeah.
the craft, the sheer grit that actually turns that idea into something real.
Absolutely.
And speaking of real, one recurring theme that we saw
Yeah.
was the importance of finishing what you start.
Yes. Like that was huge.
Yeah.
It almost seems counterintuitive, especially in a field that is just bursting with creativity.
Yeah.
But multiple developers emphasize the value of actually shipping, even if it's something small or like crappy in their words.
Yeah.
Like it's about building that muscle of completion.
Yeah. Thomas Brush, the creator of Pinstripe, had a great anecdote about this. He's on his third major game now,
wow.
but admits the scope of his current project just like ballooned
Oh, wow.
and led to like 2 years of what he called development hell.
Oh, no.
And his advice, and it resonated with a lot of the other developers too, was to start small.
Oh, interesting.
Get those wins under your belt. Learn the process from start to finish
Right.
before tackling something massive.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful lesson in managing scope creep, which we know can be like a huge challenge,
Absolutely.
especially for us creative types.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to that idea of,
Yeah.
instead of trying to build the whole skyscraper at once, you start with a solid foundation.
Right.
Maybe a few floors, prove the concept, and then build from there.
Exactly. And speaking of foundations,
Oh, yeah.
the game design document, or GDD, came up a lot.
Now, I know some indie devs see this as like a big studio thing.
Yeah.
But Creative Labs made a really compelling case for it.
Okay.
Even for, smaller projects.
So let's unpack this then.
Yeah.
What's so magical about a GDD? Even for solo devs or small teams?
It's about clarity and focus.
Okay.
A GDD acts as your game's blueprint.
Right.
It outlines the core mechanics, the story, the target audience, even marketing ideas.
Oh, wow.
It helps you stay on track, especially when that creative energy just starts pulling you in a million directions.
Oh, yeah. So it's not about like stifling creativity. It's about channeling it effectively.
Exactly.
Like having a map doesn't stop you from exploring. It just
Yeah.
helps you avoid getting lost in the woods.
Right. It's about making intentional choices.
Right.
Rather than just letting the project run away from you.
Yeah.
And this ties into another key takeaway.
Okay.
Prototyping.
I love prototyping.
Oh, yeah. Gambit in their tips video
Yeah.
really drove this point home. It's like that aha moment where your ideas take this like concrete form
Yes.
and you can actually see how they play out.
It's about getting your hands dirty,
Yeah.
testing the gameplay, and crucially, getting feedback early.
Yes.
Think of it as this low-risk way to validate your ideas before you invest months of development time.
Totally. And this is where understanding player psychology comes in.
Yes.
Gambit also stressed the importance of making your core mechanics
Yeah.
feel good from the get-go.
Right.
You can have the most brilliant concept in the world. But if the basic gameplay is like clunky
Yeah.
or frustrating, it won't matter.
It's like a chef who spends hours crafting this complex dish,
Right.
but forgets to season it properly.
Yeah.
Like the foundation has to be solid for the rest
Right.
to work.
Right.
And prototyping lets you see how players interact, where those friction points are,
Yeah.
and refine those core mechanics before you build the whole game around them.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got this mindset of finish things,
Right.
plan with a GDD.
And prototype early.
Yeah.
But where did those game-changing ideas even come from in the first place?
Yeah. Is it all just flashes of genius in the shower?
Right.
I mean, inspiration definitely plays a role.
Yeah.
But Gambit had this super practical tip for sparking those aha moments.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Break it down for us.
Right.
What's this magic all about?
They call it the this but that rule.
This but that. Okay.
It's deceptively simple.
Okay.
You take something that already works, whether it's a game mechanic, a genre, even a whole game,
Okay.
and you add a twist.
Okay.
Like, this is Minecraft BT. It's in 4D.
Whoa.
Or this is a horror game, but you play as the monster.
Oh, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm seeing infinite possibilities. Minecraft in 4D.
Right?
Sign me up for that development team.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that familiarity while introducing a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Another example they gave was Among Us,
Oh, yeah.
which blew up in part due to streamers playing it, but that wouldn't have happened if the core gameplay wasn't solid to begin with.
It's like there's an element of luck, but you have to be prepared for that luck to strike.
Right.
You need a game that's genuinely fun to play, and then who knows, maybe the stars align.
That's a great point, but it's also a reminder that passion should be your driving force.
Yeah.
The reality is that most indie games don't become these overnight successes or make a fortune.
Yeah.
If you're solely in it for the money, you're likely setting yourself up for disappointment.
So true.
It's got to be about the love of the game. The challenge of creation.
But what about the tools of the trade?
Okay.
Do you need to be like a coding wizard to bring these ideas to life?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
While coding skills are obviously valuable,
Yeah.
a recurring theme was that the engine you choose isn't as crucial as the execution.
Okay.
Artindi actually showcased a game that was built entirely in Roblox
Roblox.
in their indie dev success video.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you can create something incredible.
Regardless of the tools.
Yeah.
As long as you have the vision and the dedication.
It's easy to get caught up in like the engine wars,
Oh, yeah.
but ultimately it's about your creativity and how you use the tools to express it.
And speaking of expression, let's talk art style.
Okay.
What advice did the developers have on making games visually appealing?
Yeah.
I'm no artist, but even I know that the look of a game can like make or break it.
Absolutely.
What were some of the insights that stood out to you?
Gambit had some great advice on pixel art,
Okay.
especially for beginners.
Yeah.
They warned against common pitfalls like using different size pixels
Oh, yeah.
and going overboard with like too many colors.
The temptation of the full color palette.
Right.
You think you need all those vibrant hues?
Yeah.
But sometimes restraint is key.
Exactly. A well-defined and consistent art style goes a long way in creating a polished look and feel.
Yeah.
And don't forget, your art style can also communicate the tone and atmosphere of your game.
Like how Pinstripe's dark, almost hand-drawn visuals instantly set the mood for a creepy atmospheric experience.
Exactly.
It's not just about being pretty, it's about setting the stage for the player's journey.
Absolutely. And speaking of setting the stage, let's not forget about sound design.
Oh, yeah?
Artindi made a great point about how sound contributes to a game's emotional impact, even more so than the visuals.
Interesting.
They even suggested spending a bit extra on a musician if you can afford it.
That's music to my ears.
Pun intended.
Pun intended, of course. But seriously, good sound design is so often overlooked. And yet it can completely transform the experience.
It's about creating believable sounds, not just relying on those cheesy stock effects.
Yeah.
Artindi specifically called out the desk slap and burp sound effects, urging devs to think more creatively.
So we've got a solid foundation now, right? We've talked about the mindset finishing projects, prototyping, generating ideas.
Yeah.
Even touched on art style and sound design. But what about actually bringing those ideas to life in the game world itself?
That brings us to the crucial element of level design
Okay.
and how it can make or break the player experience.
Let's dive into that.
Okay.
Because level design seems like it would vary wildly depending on what kind of game you're making.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's like comparing the layout of a sprawling open-world RPG to a tightly packed puzzle game.
Yeah.
Each genre has its own set of challenges and best practices
Absolutely.
when it comes to level design.
Right.
So let's start with the classics, arcade games.
Yeah.
What stood out to you in terms of designing levels for that fast-paced, score-driven experience?
Artindi's insights on arcade level design were spot on.
Okay.
They emphasize the challenge of simplicity. It's so tempting to cram in all sorts of features and mechanics,
Right.
but that can actually clutter the experience and distract from the core gameplay loop.
It's like you're trying to create that perfect flow state for the player.
Right.
Where they're completely absorbed in the moment-to-moment gameplay.
Yeah.
Too much complexity can just break that immersion. Exactly. It's about creating a tight, responsive experience that keeps players coming back for just one more try. And as with any genre managing, scope creep is crucial.
Oh, totally.
Keep those arcade levels focused
Right.
and avoid overwhelming the player.
Okay, next up, horror games.
Ooh.
Fun. Now I'm a bit of a scaredy cat myself.
Okay.
So I'm always fascinated by like the art of creating truly terrifying experiences.
Yeah.
Is it all about jump scares and darkness?
Actually, several developers cautioned against relying too heavily on those tropes.
Really?
They argued that true horror comes from building tension,
Okay.
atmosphere, and letting the player's imagination fill in the blanks.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's like you're not just throwing scares at the player. You're crafting an unsettling experience that gets under their skin and stays with them long after they've stopped playing.
Right. Artinda suggested some really interesting alternatives,
Okay.
like giving players meaningful interactions with the environment,
Oh, interesting.
introducing consequences for their actions, and building stakes that feel real.
So it's about creating a sense of vulnerability and dread rather than just relying on like cheap tricks.
Yeah, I can see how that would be much more effective in the long run.
Exactly.
And they also highlighted the power of contrast.
Nice.
Like interspersing moments of calm and safety
Right.
can actually make the scary parts even more impactful.
Ah, that makes sense. It's like you need those moments of respite
Yes.
to really appreciate the moments of terror.
Exactly.
It's like a roller coaster. You need those slow climbs to build up the anticipation for the big drops.
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears now to tower defense games.
All right.
What were some of the key takeaways for designing levels in this strategy-heavy genre?
This is where things get really interesting. Artindi actually encouraged a bit of scope creep
Wait,
in tower defense games,
okay.
which is kind of a departure from the keep it simple mantra that we've seen in other genres.
Scope creep is a good thing in this context.
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive.
It makes sense when you think about it. Okay. Tower defense games thrive on giving players a wide range of options,
Okay.
strategies and synergies to experiment with.
Yeah.
The goal is to create a level design that allows for multiple solutions and encourages replayability.
So it's about creating a strategic sandbox where players can test different tower combinations, upgrade paths, and tactical approaches.
Yeah,
I could see how that would keep things fresh and engaging.
exactly. And this diversity of options just encourages players to come back for more,
Yeah.
striving for that perfect run or trying out new strategies they haven't explored before.
All right, let's venture into the vast and often daunting world of open world games.
Okay.
What advice did the developers have for crafting those sprawling, immersive experiences?
Artindi made a really insightful point.
Mm-hmm.
Content is king in open world games.
Okay.
It's not just about creating a massive map.
Right.
It's about filling that map with meaningful activities,
Yeah.
compelling characters and stories that make exploration truly rewarding.
So it's not about the size of the world, it's about the richness of the experience within that world.
Yes.
It's about making every corner feel like it has a purpose, a story to tell.
Precisely. And travel mechanics play a crucial role as well.
Oh, yeah.
You want players to enjoy traversing the environment,
Right.
not feel like it's a chore.
Oh, I definitely played open world games where fast travel became my best friend.
Yeah,
Sometimes getting from point A to point B just felt tedious.
right.
And it took me out of the experience.
Right, effective travel mechanics should enhance the experience.
Yeah.
Whether it's horseback riding, sailing, flying, or even teleporting.
Right.
The mode of transportation should feel integrated into the world and make exploration enjoyable.
Okay, let's up the ante with survival games.
Okay.
What were some of the key considerations for designing levels
Yeah.
that are both challenging and engaging?
Artindi emphasized the importance of finding that sweet spot between difficulty and player skill.
Okay.
You want the world to feel dangerous and unforgiving, but you also want to give players the tools and opportunities to overcome those obstacles.
So it's about creating a sense of accomplishment when players succeed.
Yeah.
But not making it so punishing that they give up in frustration.
Exactly. And this often comes down to careful consideration of resource placement.
Okay.
The types of threats players will encounter,
Right.
and the crafting systems that allow them to create tools and shelter.
It's about giving players agency in their survival story, allowing them to make strategic choices that determine their fate.
Precisely. And another crucial point was that difficulty should be based on player skill, not random chance.
Oh, interesting.
You want players to feel challenged but not unfairly punished by factors outside their control.
Good. Next up, we're delving into the interconnected world of Metroidvanias.
All right.
What stood out to you in terms of designing levels for this exploration-heavy genre?
Artindi encouraged developers to think outside the box when it comes to locking off areas in Metroidvanias.
Okay.
Instead of relying on simple keys or arbitrary level requirements, they suggested finding more creative approaches that tie into the game's lore and the player's abilities.
So instead of just finding a key to unlock a door, maybe the player needs to learn a new ability or solve a puzzle that interacts with the environment in a meaningful way.
Exactly.
That sounds much more engaging.
And just like with open world games, the flow of exploration is crucial.
Right.
You want to encourage players to uncover the secrets of the world
Without
without forcing them to backtrack excessively.
Right. Backtracking can really kill the momentum.
Yeah.
Especially in a genre that thrives on discovery and exploration.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the adrenaline-pumping world of first-person shooters.
Okay.
What advice did the developers have for creating those intense, action-packed levels?
Our attendees stressed the importance of originality in FPS level design.
Okay.
With so many established franchises and familiar tropes,
Right.
it's important to find ways to stand out from the crowd, to
Yeah.
surprise players with unique mechanics and memorable encounters.
So it's not enough to just create a series of corridors and arenas.
Right.
You need to think outside the box, innovate, and give players something they haven't seen before.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of smooth and responsive player movement.
Oh, yeah?
The controls should feel intuitive and natural, allowing players to navigate the environment with precision and fluidity.
Oh, I can't stand clunky controls in an FPS game.
Right?
It just completely breaks the immersion
It does.
and makes it impossible to enjoy the experience.
Smooth movement and a well-designed UI are crucial for creating that seamless flow state
Right.
that makes FPS games so engaging.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about boss fights.
Okay.
Those epic encounters are often the culmination of a game's challenges.
Right?
So how do we design them to be truly memorable and rewarding?
Vertindi had some great advice on this.
Okay.
They cautioned against simply creating scaled-up versions of regular enemies.
Right.
Effective boss fights should introduce unique mechanics,
Okay.
take place in engaging arenas.
And clearly communicate the win conditions to the player.
So it's about creating a sense of spectacle, a climactic showdown that truly tests the player's skills and provides a satisfying sense of accomplishment when overcome.
Precisely. And they also highlighted the importance of the arena itself. The environment can be a powerful tool in boss fight design, creating opportunities for strategic maneuvering environmental hazards,
Right.
and even interactive elements that can turn the tide of battle.
It's like a chess match where the environment itself becomes a weapon in the player's arsenal.
That's a great analogy. But even with the most meticulously crafted levels and epic boss fights, your game won't get very far if no one knows about it.
Right.
And that brings us to another crucial yet often overlooked aspect of game development, marketing and the business side of things.
Okay, let's talk business. What advice did the developers have for navigating this often daunting aspect of game creation?
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how these developers, even those who have achieved success, still emphasize the importance of the journey itself.
Yeah, and one thing they kept coming back to was the importance of feedback.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to share your work in progress, get input from other developers, potential players, even people outside the game dev world.
Yeah. Fresh eyes can spot things you miss.
Right, absolutely.
It's like having a sounding board to help you kind of refine your ideas.
Right.
And make sure the game resonates with your audience.
And remember, feedback is a gift even when it's tough to hear.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to learn and grow
Right.
and ultimately make your game better.
I think that ties back to the whole healthy relationship with failure thing we talked about earlier. Game dev is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And there are bound to be stumbles along the way.
Exactly. It's about that resilience, the ability to pick yourself up, learn from those mistakes, and keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
That's what separates the successful devs
Right.
from those who give up too soon.
So to wrap up this epic deep dive into world of game development, what's the one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting out?
If I could only offer one nugget of wisdom,
Yeah.
it would be this: embrace the journey.
Yeah, okay.
Game development is challenging, rewarding, and ultimately a deeply personal experience.
It's about pouring your creativity, passion, and vision into something tangible, something you can share with the world.
Exactly. And remember, the most important ingredient in any successful game is passion.
Oh, yeah.
If you genuinely love what you're creating, that enthusiasm will shine through in every aspect of your game.
So to all you aspiring game developers out there, go forth and create. Don't be afraid to experiment, to take risks, and most importantly, have fun along the way.
Now that you've gotten a glimpse into the world of game development, what kind of game will you create?
We can't wait to see it. Happy game deving.